in 1820, there was only one guy on the ballot, really. The Democratic Republicans were the only party, and they ran Monroe. Well, in 1824, that's all going to fall apart. The Democratic Party will split into two, and they get called different things, but we'll say that one side will become the Democrats, and the other side will become the National Republicans, which are different from today's Republicans. These folks, these National Republicans, supported using the federal government for expanding industrial economy. They wanted to do things like build canals and roads with federal money, whereas the Democratic Party will not want the federal government getting involved in that sort of business. The National Republicans favored territorial expansion and promoted economic growth as their major policy, or policy goal, I should say. Now, between 1789 and 1820, presidential nominees came from a caucus system, meaning the leaders of the two parties got together and simply picked somebody. Now, under this system, the obvious next president would be John Quincy Adams, because he was the Secretary of State, and that had been the way it had gone now for a number of elections. But Henry Clay will not want Adams to be president, and he will mobilize the West in support for him. He's Speaker of the House. William H. Crawford will run as a compromise between Adams and Clay. Maybe you can't stand either one. You think they're both too extreme. And so Crawford tries to come out to try to split the difference. He's an extreme states' rightist, more of an old-school Democratic Republican who wants to reduce the power of the federal government. John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay turn to their state legislatures to get nominated. Individual people are not yet voting for president. State legislatures are choosing electors who then pick the president. John Quincy Adams is, of course, an elite. His dad had been president, and he was largely seen as a Federalist. He was still not entirely accepted into the Democratic Party. He was cold and unlikable. He was fairly personally unpopular. And, of course, he was from the North, and the political strength was in the South. Henry Clay, on the other hand, is well-liked. He's the Speaker of the House. He's, of course, done the Missouri Compromise and gotten a lot of credit for that. And he has a very specific policy proposal. It's called the American System. He wants to use federal money to finance internal improvements. He wants a protective tariff, a tax on imported goods to promote American people buying American goods. And he wants to strengthen the Bank of the U.S. All of these point to a stronger federal government. Clay's plan is that no one will get a majority of the electoral votes. And when this happens, it goes to the House of Representatives, who break the tie. Well, he's Speaker of the House. So Clay is playing for a tie, no one getting a majority, that will then go to the House, which of course he'll win because he's Speaker of the House. And Clay assumes he's going to win until Andrew Jackson shows up. Now, Andrew Jackson, of course, is the most popular man in America. He's praised as a hero both for his victory at the Battle of New Orleans and stealing Spain from Florida. And he appeals directly to the people. He puts the pressure on the state legislatures by demanding, by having the people demand that they support him. He's a war hero. He's a former senator, as well as a former representative from Tennessee. He's a celebrity, of course. He's very famous. But his opponents will also point out that he's a murderer. He's killed some people, both shooting deserters, and also he's gotten into altercations with people. He is engages in duels, which of course many people believe to be murder, and he's got a problem with his wife. Now, him and his wife actually have a wonderful relationship. Her name's Rachel. But back in the days immediately after the Revolution, when they met and fell in love, she was married to another man, and he took off. He left, and she was unable to secure a divorce from him. Well, Jackson and Rachel got married anyway, even though there was technically no divorce from this other man. Well, at the time, the morals and the values, particularly of where they were on the North Carolina-Tennessee border, nobody really cared. But when this came to light, it became a primary means of attack for Andrew Jackson. And in fact, when Rachel Jackson, his wife, read a newspaper article saying all sorts of terrible things about her and her character and what kind of woman she was, she fainted and never woke up. She died. And so Jackson comes to believe that his wife was killed by his political enemies. And this is not a man you want mad at you. You really don't want to be blamed for killing his wife. Now, when the votes are actually cast, The whole thing is a mess. Jackson ends up with the most electoral votes and also the most popular votes, although many states are still not yet having a popular vote. They're just letting the state government choose the winner. But nobody ends up with a majority, and as we know, when nobody ends up with a majority, it goes to the House of Representatives for the tie to be broken. Now, normally this would favor Clay, who dominates the House. But the problem is only the top 3 finishers get to go to the House, and Clay finished 4th, so he's out. He can't win. He's not on the ballot anymore. Crawford has a stroke and is no longer healthy enough to be president. And so now the House must choose between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. Well, Clay, who's from Kentucky, and Jackson, who's from Tennessee, which are next to each other, of course, they don't like each other. They are rivals. They personally dislike each other. And so Clay now controls the election. The House is going to do what Clay says. And so Clay cuts a deal with John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams makes Clay the Secretary of State. Remember, that means next president, right? And he agrees to adopt Clay's policies, Clay's American system. So Clay goes and tells the House, vote for John Quincy Adams. So even though Jackson got more popular vote and more electoral votes, the House chooses Adams to be president. The country comes to call this the corrupt bargain. And Adams will widely be seen as an illegitimate president by the nation at the time. The House and the Senate will both be dominated by supporters of Andrew Jackson, and they will refuse to pass anything that John Quincy Adams attempts to do. And John Quincy Adams will have a failed presidency. He will be able to do much of anything. Congress refuses to pass his American system because they see that as the heart of this crooked deal between him and Henry Clay. Adams attempts to appoint a delegation to an international conference with Simon Bolivar, the great South American revolutionary, but the South blocks it because Haitians will be there, and Haitians, of course, are black, and they'll be sending a black delegation. Adams pushes through a tariff, and remember the South hates tariffs, and it becomes to be called the Tariff of Abominations and angers the South even more than they already were. It was the tariff was supposed to protect New England textile merchants, but what it really did was anger the South. And in fact, it was amended in such a way that even the New England voters didn't like it when the whole thing was done. And John Quincy Adams will be one of our least successful presidents. In 1828, we'll have a one-on-one rematch this time. John Quincy Adams running for the National Republican Party, Andrew Jackson running as the Democratic Republican. And the National Republican Party is really just the old Federalist reconstituted. Jackson's supporters are Westerners. They want land. They want expansion. They also want democracy. They're demanding more and more that people get to vote for president and not the state government simply deciding who that state's going to support. The Great Awakening followers tend to support Jackson. Industrial laborers who see John Quincy Adams as representing their bosses, who they tend not to like. And, of course, the traditional Democratic Republicans support Andrew Jackson. The election got extremely personal. I made a mistake earlier. This is the election where Rachel Jackson, falls into a coma and dies. John Quincy Adams is called an elitist. He's accused of corruption because he puts a gambling device in the White House, a pool table. Jackson, of course, is accused of being a madman and a murderer and unable to control his temper. As you can see, John Quincy Adams wins the traditional Federalist stronghold of the Northeast, but Andrew Jackson wins the South and the West and crushes John Quincy Adams, ushering in the age of Jackson and what's sometimes called the age of the common man.